The first time I saw my wife lose control, she did not raise her voice. That was the part everyone remembered wrong afterward. The gossip columns called it a scene. The men in black suits near the private elevator called it an incident. And my ex called it proof that I had married a monster. But I was standing close enough to feel the heat of Reina Kazama's body go still beside mine. Close enough to see the tiny muscle move once in her jaw. Close enough to know that the silence she carried into that room was far more dangerous than any scream could have been. It happened in the winter garden of the Kisaragi Hotel, beneath a glass ceiling streaked with January rain, while 200 people with too much money pretended not to stare at us. I had gone there wearing a black silk dress I could barely afford to look at, a wedding ring that still felt heavier than truth on my finger, and the careful smile of a woman who had spent the last 6 months telling herself that her marriage was only an arrangement. Then Akari kissed me. Not gently, not by accident. She stepped out of the crowd in white satin, caught my wrist with the same hand that had once held mine under tables, and pressed her mouth against mine in front of everyone, as if she could reach backward through time and steal the last version of me she had owned. For 1 second I froze, not because I wanted it, but because betrayal teaches the body to stop asking permission to be hurt. Then Reina's hand closed around my other wrist. Not hard, never hard, just enough to remind me I had somewhere else to stand. Akari pulled back with triumph shining in her eyes, and Reina looked at her the way winter looks at a candle. "Take your hand off my wife," she said. 5 words, calm as falling snow. The room changed temperature. Akari laughed, because Akari had always mistaken cruelty for courage when she had an audience. "Your wife?" she said. She was mine first. I felt Reina's fingers loosen immediately, giving me the choice to move away. That small mercy in the middle of public humiliation nearly broke me. I stepped behind her shoulder, not hiding, not exactly, but letting the woman who had given me her name stand between me and the person who had taught me shame. Reina did not touch Akari. She did not threaten her. She simply tilted her head, and every security guard in the room seemed to remember who signed their contracts. "You are leaving," Reina said. "Now." Akari's smile faltered. "You don't scare me." "I know," Reina replied. "That is why I pity you." That was all. No violence, no dramatic order, no glass breaking. Yet within 30 seconds, Akari was escorted toward the private corridor, pale beneath her makeup, while my former best friend May followed after her, looking like a woman who had finally realized she was not standing beside romance but wreckage. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt the ghost of Akari's mouth on mine, the whole room's curiosity on my skin, and Reina's rage held so carefully that it made my knees weak. When she turned back to me, her face was cold again, beautiful and unreadable beneath the garden lights. "Did she hurt you?" she asked. I shook my head because I did not trust my voice. "Mina." My name in her mouth was the only warm thing in the room. "Tell me the truth." That was when I understood that Reina Kazama had not snapped because another woman kissed me. She had snapped because she saw me go still. She had seen the old wound open before I did. And to explain why that mattered, I have to go back to the night I became the kind of woman who would marry a Yakuza heiress for safety, revenge, and the impossible chance to feel untouchable for once. I had loved Akari Sato for 3 years before I learned she had been auditioning for a softer life with my best friend behind my back. We were 29 then, both old enough to know better and still young enough to mistake history for loyalty. Akari was the kind of beautiful that made people forgive her before she apologized. All glossy black hair, lazy smiles, and a laugh she could turn toward a room like a match. She managed the front office of the gallery where I worked as an acquisitions assistant, and I restored damaged paper in a back room that smelled of rice paste, old books, and patience. I was not glamorous. I wore aprons with ink stains, kept my hair in a crooked knot, and knew more about foxing on antique prints than about how to survive a woman who lied with both hands on my face. May had been my best friend since art school. She was funny, restless, always underemployed, always staying on my couch between disasters. I loved her in the way you love someone you think the world keeps failing. I lent her money. I read her applications. I defended her when other people called her selfish because I thought they did not understand her wounds. Later, I would realize understanding someone's wounds does not mean volunteering to become their bandage. The betrayal happened at the gallery's winter donor preview. Akari had insisted I come upstairs from the restoration room because the director wanted me available to explain a set of Edo period prints to collectors. I wore a dark green dress from a thrift shop and the gold earrings my grandmother had left me. May did my makeup in the staff bathroom, laughing because I blinked every time she brought the mascara wand close. "You look like the romantic lead who doesn't know she's pretty," she said. I rolled my eyes and believed she meant it kindly. Akari arrived late, kissed my cheek too close to my mouth and whispered, "Don't hide tonight, Mina. People need to see you." I thought she was proud of me. I thought I was lucky. The first hour passed in wine, soft classical music, and rich people asking questions as if knowledge were another object they might purchase. I was standing near a display case, explaining the restoration of a torn courtesan print to a silver-haired donor when the room quieted behind me. Not all at once, in ripples. I turned and saw Akari near the central staircase, her hand at May's waist. May was crying, but not with shame, with the overwhelmed brightness of someone being chosen. Akari raised a champagne glass. "Since everyone we love is here," she said, her voice carrying beautifully through the room, "I suppose I should stop being a coward. May and I are leaving for Kyoto tonight, together. We didn't plan to announce it this way, but life is too short to keep pretending for other people." For other people. I remember that phrase more clearly than anything else. Not for Mina. Not for the woman she had kissed that morning over coffee. Not for the person whose key was still on her ring. Other people. The donor beside me took one polite step away, as if heartbreak were contagious. Someone gasped. Someone else whispered my name. May looked across the room and found me. Her face crumpled. Akari did not look ashamed. She looked noble. That was always her genius. She could turn betrayal into liberation if enough people were watching. "Mina," she said, finally turning toward me with wet eyes she had prepared in advance. "I'm sorry. I didn't want to hurt you." My body had gone very still. I felt the room waiting for me to perform pain in a way they could discuss later. If I cried, I would be pathetic. If I screamed, I would be unstable. If I smiled, I would be dignified but dead inside. "How long?" I asked. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone standing underwater. May stepped forward. "Please don't do this here." I almost laughed. "You announced it here." Akari's expression shifted, just slightly, from regret to irritation, because hiding was hurting everyone. "Everyone?" I said. "How generous of you to include yourself twice." A few people looked down. The director moved toward us, horror masked as concern. May clasped her hands together. "I never meant to take her from you." "No," I said, staring at the woman who had slept beneath my quilt for 2 months after her last breakup. "You just meant to keep her." Akari's jaw tightened. "This is why I couldn't tell you. You make everything a trial." There it was. The knife she had sharpened in private before bringing it to the party. She was not leaving because she cheated. She was leaving because I would not make cheating easy. The director touched my elbow. "Mina, perhaps we should step into the office." I looked at his hand until he removed it. The entire room had chosen the warm comfort of Akari's version already. May was fragile, Akari was brave, and I was the inconvenient woman bleeding on the floor where collectors might slip. I took off my staff badge and set it on the nearest tray of champagne glasses. "Find someone else to explain the prints," I said. Then I walked out. I made it through the lobby, past the coat check, down the marble steps, and into the snow before I started shaking. My phone buzzed with messages within minutes. Are you okay? I had no idea. Be careful, Akari is upset too. I was sure she would survive. Don't burn bridges professionally. That one came from the director. I blocked him while standing under a street lamp in borrowed heels, snow melting through my thin dress, and realized I had no apartment to go back to because Akari's name was on the lease, and May had been staying in our spare room. Betrayal is never just romantic, it is logistical. It has keys, bills, toothbrushes, shared passwords, mutual friends, and the terrible fact that grief still needs somewhere to sleep. I walked until my feet went numb. The gallery was in the old merchant district, close to the river, and the kind of restaurants where people lowered their voices when certain black cars stopped outside. I did not notice the car following me at first. I noticed only the snow, the way my earrings felt heavy against my neck, the humiliating blur of tears I kept wiping away with cold fingers. Then a door opened ahead of me. Warm amber light spilled from a private club I knew only by rumor, a place without a sign, its entrance hidden behind dark wooden panels carved with cranes. Two men in tailored suits stood beneath the awning. Between them, a woman stepped into the snow. She was tall, dressed in a black coat over a white silk blouse, her hair cut to her jaw in a sharp line that framed a face too controlled to be called delicate. Her eyes were dark, nearly black, and when they settled on me, the street seemed to narrow. I knew her before she introduced herself. Everyone in the district knew the Kazama name. Not in detail. Detail was dangerous. We knew enough to lower our voices, pay bills on time, and pretend the protection fees paid by certain restaurants were merely cultural sponsorship. Reina Kazama was the only daughter of Kazama Hiroto, the man newspapers called a community patron and police briefings called something else when they thought microphones were off. She was 36, rumored to run half the legitimate businesses her father used to wash the sins out of old money. Cold, people said, untouchable. Widowed, perhaps, though no one knew from whom. I had seen her twice at gallery events, always from a distance, always surrounded by men who looked at her the way wolves might look at a blade. "Miss Tanaka," she said. She knew my name. Of course she did. "You are going to lose your toes if you keep walking in those shoes." I stared at her, breath clouding between us. That would be inconvenient. Her gaze flicked to my bare shoulders, my trembling hands, the staff badge absent from my dress. "Come inside." "No, thank you." Pride is strange. Mine had no home, no girlfriend, no job after the stunt I had just pulled, and yet it still managed to stand upright in the snow and refuse a Yakuza princess like I had options. Reina's mouth moved by 1 millimeter. Not amusement, something sharper. "Then at least stand under the awning while you refuse help." "I'm fine." "You are crying in a snowstorm outside my club." "Technically, I'm crying near your club." One of the suited men coughed into his fist. Reina did not look away from me. "Do you always argue when hypothermia is approaching?" "Only with strangers who know my name." "We have met." "No, you have seen me explaining prints to donors while you look terrifying near the sack table." This time the corner of her mouth definitely moved. "Then we are practically intimate." The absurdity of the sentence coming from that face, in that voice, broke something in me. I laughed once, and then the laugh turned into a sob I could not stop. My knees threatened to fold. Reina moved forward but stopped just short of touching me. That mattered. Even then, when I was too shattered to understand the pattern, some part of me noticed that she had the power to take up the whole street and chose not to crowd me. "Miss Tanaka," she said, softer. "Mina, you may hate me inside where it is warm." I went inside because I was cold, because I had nowhere else to go, and because the way she said my name made refusing feel like punishing myself for Akari's sins. The club smelled of cedar, whiskey, and expensive silence. Dark wood floors, low tables, a wall of old calligraphy scrolls I wanted to inspect even through heartbreak. Reina led me not into the main room, but down a private corridor to an office with paper screens, a city view, and a single bonsai shaped like endurance. She handed me a wool blanket and tea. Not alcohol, tea. Drink, she said. Is that an order? A recommendation with infrastructure. I hated that I almost smiled. My hands shook around the cup. Reina sat across from me, not behind the desk, as if she wanted no barrier but also no intimacy she had not earned. Do you want me to call someone? No. Do you have somewhere to sleep? No. Her expression did not change, but something in the room did. Did they put you out? I looked at the tea. They announced they were leaving together, in front of everyone. I left before the room could finish deciding whose pain was more tasteful. Reina was silent for a long moment. Akari Sato, she said. I looked up sharply. You know her? I know her father owes mine money. My stomach turned. Of course he does. That does not make you responsible. Tell the universe. It seems confused. Reina's eyes moved over my face. Your director will call tomorrow and ask you to return your keys. He will say your conduct created donor discomfort. He has been trying to replace the restoration department with outsourced consultants for months. I stared at her. How do you know that? The gallery rents from a company I own. You own the building? One of them. That is not a normal thing to say. No. She said it without apology. I should have been afraid. I was, a little. But beneath the fear was something else. The strange relief of being in a room with someone who did not pretend power was not power. Akari had controlled stories and called it honesty. Reina controlled buildings and called it ownership. I knew which was more dangerous. I also knew which felt less insulting. Why am I here? I asked. Because you looked like you were about to walk into the river. My throat closed. I wasn't. Reina held my gaze. I know. But you looked tired enough not to notice if the street ended. No one had seen that. Not Akari. Not May. Not the director. Not the friends texting soft little questions while staying in the warm gallery. Reina Kazama, with blood in her family name and snow on her coat, had seen it from across the street. I looked down before I cried again. I don't want to owe you anything. Then do not. People always owe people like you. People owe men like my father, she said. I prefer contracts. That was the beginning of the arrangement, though neither of us called it that until later. Reina put me in a guest room at a hotel she owned, sent a doctor to check my feet, and arranged for my belongings to be collected from Akari's apartment while I slept under sheets so clean they felt like a different tax bracket. In the morning, she appeared in the sitting room with coffee, my grandmother's earrings in a small velvet pouch, and a folder of documents. Your lease was never updated to include your legal residency after you moved in, she said, placing the folder on the table. Akari kept that advantage. Of course she did. Your gallery director sent termination paperwork at 6 this morning. Efficient cruelty. I had my lawyer review it. They owe you severance, unpaid restoration premiums, and attribution fees for 3 catalog essays they published under the senior curator's name. I stared at the papers. I wrote those on salary. No, you wrote them after hours. Your emails prove it. Why are you doing this? Reina sat across from me. Her black suit looked severe against the pale hotel room. Because I dislike theft. That's rich. One of her eyebrows lifted. Yes. I laughed despite myself, then covered my mouth because laughter felt disloyal to my heartbreak. Reina waited. What do you want? I asked. Direct. Good. She opened another folder. My father is retiring from public control of our organization. Several families are testing whether I can hold the business alliances he built without marrying into one of them. I'm sorry. Did you just move from my unpaid essays to organized crime succession politics? Yes. Smooth transition. I was told I lack warmth. You were told correctly. Her mouth twitched. I need a wife. The room went silent except for the soft hiss of the heater. Absolutely not. You have not heard the proposal. You said wife, not freelance consultant. The marriage would be legal, public, and limited by contract. 1 year minimum, renewable only by mutual consent. You would receive housing, compensation, legal protection, and full independence after conclusion. In return, you appear beside me at selected events and provide a narrative useful to both of us. A narrative. My voice went flat. I was just publicly humiliated by someone who used narrative as a weapon. Reina's gaze sharpened, not offended. Listening. Then write this one yourself. I hated that the sentence landed. Why me? Because everyone saw Akari discard you. I flinched. Reina's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. I do not say that to wound you. I say it because public cruelty creates public leverage. If I marry you, I appear uninterested in the daughters of families trying to place themselves beside me. You appear untouchable by the woman who humiliated you. Akari loses control of the story. May loses the fantasy that betrayal bought her status. Your director loses the ability to treat you as disposable. And you gain a wife without giving any of those families a claim. Yes. Blunt. Calm. No false romance. It should have repelled me. Instead, it steadied me. You're using me. Yes. That's not a great pitch. I am also offering you shelter, money you are owed, and a position from which to rebuild. You would be using me too. For revenge. At first, the two words hung there. And later? I asked, though I did not know why. Reina looked toward the window where snow blurred the city into white and gray. Later, perhaps we become civil. That was all she promised. Not love, not salvation, not tenderness disguised as strategy. Civil. I should have refused. I almost did. Then my phone lit with a message from Akari. I hope you find peace someday, but please don't punish May for loving me. Beneath it, a message from an old gallery friend. Are you really staying at Kazama property? Mina, be careful. People are talking. People were already talking. They had talked while I stood under the staircase. They had talked while Akari turned betrayal into bravery. They had talked while I walked out into the snow. For once, I wanted to make them choke on the next sentence. I have conditions, I said. Reina's eyes returned to me. Good. Separate bedrooms. Agreed. No touching me in private without asking. Obviously. The speed of that answer made my throat tighten. Do not say obviously like everyone knows that. Something dark moved through her face. They should. I looked down at the ringless hands folded in my lap. I continue my restoration work. My name goes on everything I create. I choose my own friends, my own clothes, my own work. Agreed. You do not hurt Akari or May. Reina went very still. Define hurt. No violence, no threats, no men following them, no ruining their lives in ways I did not choose. You think I am that careless? I think people are scared of you for reasons. People are scared because fear is easier than accuracy. I held her gaze. No violence. After a moment, she inclined her head. No violence. And if I want out, I get out. With 30 days' notice and full settlement. No. I surprised myself with the firmness of my voice. If I want out because I feel unsafe, I leave immediately. Reina studied me for a long time. Then she took a pen and amended the contract herself. Agreed. That was how I agreed to marry Reina Kazama. Not because I loved her, not because I trusted her, but because she was the first person after my humiliation who offered power without asking me to pretend it was mercy. We married 12 days later at City Hall, under a sky the color of wet paper. I wore a cream suit Reina's tailor adjusted in one afternoon, and my grandmother's earrings. Reina wore black, of course, because some women considered symbolism an unnecessary luxury. The ceremony was small. Her lawyer, my lawyer, a clerk who looked at Reina's name and suddenly forgot how to blink, and 3 Kazama men waiting outside the door like elegant storm clouds. Reina did not kiss me after the vows. She looked at me first. "May I?" she asked, so quietly only I heard. My heart stumbled, not because I wanted her then, or not only because of that, but because nobody had ever made a public ritual feel less like public ownership. I nodded. She kissed my cheek, brief and warm, and the cameras outside caught exactly what they needed. The cold Kazama daughter leaning close to her new wife with something that looked like tenderness. The news traveled faster than weather. By nightfall, Akari had called 17 times. May sent one message. "Mina, what have you done?" I looked at the marriage certificate on Reina's dining table, at the sharp black strokes of her name beside mine, and wrote back, "Chosen better company." Then I blocked her. Reina saw the message over my shoulder because she was placing tea beside me. "Petty," she said. "I can delete it." I did not say inaccurate. Living with Reina Kazama was not like moving into a home. It was like being admitted into a private museum that occasionally discussed shipments in coded language. Her penthouse occupied the top floor of a renovated warehouse near the river, all dark stone, warm wood, and windows tall enough to make the city look owned. There was a koi pond built into an interior courtyard, a library of legal texts and old poetry, a gym I never used, and a kitchen where a housekeeper named Mrs. Watanabe ruled everyone with a rice paddle and divine authority. My bedroom was across the hall from Reina's, larger than my entire old apartment, with a desk positioned to catch morning light. On the first day, I found restoration tools arranged there: brushes, wheat starch paste, handmade Japanese paper, magnification lamps, archival boxes. "You had my workroom copied," I said when Reina appeared in the doorway. "No," she said. "Copied implies imprecision. I had it improved." "That is arrogant." "Is it wrong?" I touched the brushes, furious at the sting in my eyes. "No." "Then it is accurate." She turned to leave, and I heard myself say, "Thank you." Reina paused. "You are welcome." She did not look back. That was how she gave most gifts at first, like apologies she refused to name. A new phone after mine was flooded with harassment. A list of galleries hiring restoration specialists. A black car waiting when I worked late at the archive. She never asked for gratitude, which somehow made gratitude harder to resist. Our public life began immediately. Dinners with hotel investors, temple charity events, private auctions, meetings where men twice my size bowed lower to Reina than they did to anyone else, then glanced at me with curiosity they tried to hide. I learned the choreography quickly. Stand at Reina's left. Accept tea with both hands. Smile when old women called me pretty. Say little when men tested whether I was decoration. Reina never corrected them right away. She let them reveal themselves first. Then she would say, "My wife specializes in paper restoration and provenance disputes. If your collection has survived your care, perhaps she can advise you." It was a beautiful insult, always delivered with a face like still water. I should have hated how much I enjoyed it. Akari, of course, hated all of it. Her messages came through new numbers, then through mutual acquaintances, then through the press. Sources close to Sato Gallery say the Kazama marriage was an impulsive act of revenge after an emotional breakup. I read that headline while eating breakfast across from my wife. Reina folded the newspaper once and set it aside. "Do you want me to respond?" "With what?" "Accuracy. Your accuracy tends to leave bruises." "Only on reputations." I took a sip of tea. "No, let them talk." Reina watched me. "Are you sure?" "For now." "For now" is acceptable. That was another thing I began to like about her. She did not treat decisions as permanent performances of strength. She allowed for later. She allowed for change. The first time Reina protected me in a way that scared me. We were at an auction in a private estate above the city. I had been invited to authenticate a damaged screen painting before bidding. Reina came as my wife, though everyone understood that meant half the room adjusted their posture. The host, a collector named Mr. Hasegawa, smiled too much and ignored me after learning I was not merely Kazama decoration. When I gently explained that the screen had been over-restored and the signature was likely added later, his smile turned thin. Perhaps Mrs. Kazama is nervous, because her own professional reputation is uncertain, he said. After all, sudden marriages can cloud judgment. Heat rose up my neck. Akari's roomer had arrived before me, wearing perfume. I opened my mouth, but Reina set down her cup with a soft click. The entire table quieted. Hasegawa-san, she said. Do you know why my father never bought from you? His face lost color. Kazama-sama and I have always had cordial relations. No, Reina said. You have always had expensive hope. A woman beside him choked on her tea. Reina continued, voice calm. My wife identified a false signature in 12 minutes. You had that screen for 3 years and either did not notice or did not care. Which failure would you prefer the room to remember? Hasegawa bowed so low I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Later, in the car, I stared at the city lights sliding over the window. You didn't have to do that. He insulted you. People insult me. Not twice in my hearing. The possessiveness in the sentence should have alarmed me. It did, a little. But there was no demand in it, no claim over my body or choices. Only a line drawn around my dignity with terrifying precision. I need to fight for myself too, I said. Reina looked at me. Yes. You make it hard. Because I speak first? Because when you speak, the room listens. She considered that. Then I will wait longer next time. Not defensive, not offended. She adjusted. I looked down at my wedding ring, a simple band of brushed platinum she had chosen only after asking whether I hated diamonds. Thank you. For waiting next time? For listening this time. Her gaze shifted to the window. Do not make me sound gentle. It will damage my reputation. I smiled before I could stop myself. Your secret is safe with me. Tenderness arrived in details before desire dared follow. Reina noticed I forgot to eat when concentrating and began leaving small plates in my workroom without comment. Rice balls wrapped in seaweed, sliced pears, tea gone lukewarm enough not to burn my tongue. She learned I hated being watched while repairing tears, but loved having someone quietly read nearby. She never entered my room without knocking. If my hand brushed hers at dinner, she did not trap the moment. She let it pass, which made me begin to want it again. At night, I sometimes heard her in the courtyard, speaking softly on the phone in a dialect rougher than the polished one she used at events. Once, I found her there at 2 a.m, sleeves rolled up, feeding the koi beneath moonlight. The tattoo on her forearm was visible, a crane rising through black waves, inked with such fine detail it looked alive when she moved. I had known she must have one. Still, seeing it felt like discovering a door in a wall. I didn't mean to intrude, I said. She did not cover it. You live here. That doesn't answer anything. No. The koi moved below us, orange and white shadows beneath the water. Does it bother you? She asked. The tattoo. What it means. I leaned against the wooden post. I don't know what it means. Family, obligation, violence I did not choose, and power I chose to reshape. A history people read before they read me. The confession settled quietly. Then yes, I said. Reina looked at me. I held her gaze. It bothers me, not because it's ugly, because it looks heavy. Something changed in her face, so small I might have missed it months earlier. It is. I stepped closer, then stopped. May I see? Her eyes searched mine. Then she held out her arm. I touched the ink with 2 fingers lightly, tracing the edge of one wing. Her breath went still. The air between us tightened. "Mina," she said. There was warning in it, and something beneath warning. "Yes? You should go back to bed." "Because you don't want me here." "Because I do." My fingers froze on her skin. Reina did not move away. She simply waited for me to decide what to do with the truth. I withdrew my hand slowly. "Good night, Reina." Her eyes were dark in the moonlight. "Good night, wife." It was the first time the word sounded less like a contract and more like hunger. By spring, I had a new position consulting for the city archive, and enough private restoration work to pay my own expenses. Though Reina argued with my accountant about market rates until the poor man looked ready to confess crimes he had not committed. The marriage had begun as revenge, but revenge is a poor roommate. It eats too loudly and leaves before rent is due. What remained was stranger: companionship, respect, irritation, heat. I found myself noticing Reina everywhere. The way she removed her rings before eating. The way she listened to old women with more patience than she gave powerful men. The way her gaze found me in crowded rooms as if checking weather. Once, at a garden reception, a young politician's wife flirted with me too openly, touching my sleeve and laughing too close to my ear. Reina watched from across the koi pond, expression unreadable. I expected coldness afterward. Instead, in the car, she said, "Mrs. Ito seems fond of you." I looked at her profile. "Are you jealous?" "No." That answer was fast. Efficient. Reina. She was silent long enough for neon to move over her cheek. "I disliked watching someone touch you without knowing whether you welcomed it." My heart gave a painful, beautiful twist. "I didn't. The next time I will intervene sooner." "And if I did welcome it?" Her hands remained steady in her lap. "Then I would endure it." The honesty stunned me more than jealousy would have. "You would?" "You are not my possession because you wear my ring." She turned her head then, eyes meeting mine in the dim car. Do not mistake the world's language for mine. I wanted to kiss her so badly I had to look away. The first almost kiss happened in my workroom during a thunderstorm. Rain battered the tall windows while I repaired a torn letter from a poet to her lover. Ink faded but still stubborn after 100 years. Reina sat near the shelves reading financial reports, jacket off, white shirt sleeves rolled, tattoo partly visible. Domesticity looked dangerous on her. I made the mistake of saying so. "Dangerous?" she asked, eyes still on the report. "Unexpected." "That was not what you said." "Maybe I meant it." She looked up. The room became very quiet beneath the rain. "Do I frighten you, Mina?" The question had teeth because the answer mattered. I set down my brush. "Not the way people think you do." "How then?" "You make me want things before I'm sure I can survive wanting them." Reina closed the folder slowly. "That is not fear. It feels related." She stood and came closer, stopping on the other side of the work table. "What do you want?" I hated her for asking with such control, as if she had not been undoing me for months with rice balls and restraint, and the terrible kindness of never taking what I did not offer. "You," I said, barely audible. Reina's hands flexed once at her sides. "Do you want that because she hurt you?" "No." "Because I protected you?" "No." "Because you want revenge?" "Revenge doesn't look at me like it's afraid of wanting me too much." Her face changed. Not visibly to anyone else perhaps, but I saw it. The cold woman losing one layer of armor in a room that smelled of paper and rain. "If I kiss you," she said, "I will not be able to pretend I do not want my wife." My breath caught. "Then don't pretend." She came around the table slowly, giving me time to move. I did not. When she lifted her hand, she stopped a breath from my face. "May I?" "Yes." Her fingers touched my cheek first. Warm, careful. a question asked again in skin. The kiss was soft for perhaps 2 seconds before months of restraint moved underneath it. Reina kissed like a woman who had survived by discipline and hated how quickly I made discipline tremble. Her other hand settled at my waist only after I leaned closer. I felt the edge of the table behind me, the storm around us, the impossible fact of her mouth on mine, and the even more impossible fact that I was not disappearing inside it. I was there, choosing. When she pulled back, her forehead rested near mine without touching. "Tell me to stop," she said. "I don't want you to stop." "Not the same thing." My eyes stung. "I know, don't stop." The second kiss was deeper, less careful but still listening. Her hand slid to the back of my neck, and I heard myself make a sound that turned her breathing uneven. Then thunder cracked overhead, and a phone rang from her jacket, like the universe had no respect for longing. Reina closed her eyes. "If that is my father, I may commit patricide." I laughed against her shoulder, and the tension broke into something human. She answered. It was mercifully for everyone. Not her father, but a business emergency at the docks. She left 20 minutes later after kissing my forehead once with such restraint that I wanted to drag her back by her tie. I did not. Growth is painful. We did not become lovers that night, not in the easy way stories might have demanded. We became more honest, which was far more dangerous. Reina told me about her first love, a pianist whose family had been threatened by association with hers until Reina ended it to keep her safe. She told me about her father's disappointment that she did not enjoy fear for its own sake. She told me that the Kazama organization was half legitimate now and half ghosts refusing to die, and that she had spent years dragging men from shadows into boardrooms because contracts left fewer bodies than pride. I told her about my grandmother teaching me to mend paper by making the wound stronger than the surrounding sheet. I told her that Akari had once made me feel chosen by entering rooms loudly with my name in her mouth, and that I had confused being displayed with being cherished. Reina listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "I would rather know where you are uncomfortable than where you can perform happiness." I think I loved her then. I did not say it. Love, after betrayal, felt like carrying a lantern through a room full of sleeping dogs. One wrong step and everything might wake. Akari returned in early summer with a strategy. She had lost her gallery position after Reina's lawyers exposed several irregularities in catalog attributions. Not ruined, because I had forbidden that, but embarrassed, less employable, less adored. May, it seemed, had discovered that being chosen by Akari came with the unpaid labor of maintaining Akari's mythology. They were still together, though no longer glowing. I saw them first at a charity exhibition for young artists, where I had been asked to speak about preservation. Reina could not attend the opening because of a tense negotiation with a shipping partner, and I told myself I was relieved to stand alone. I wanted to prove I could. The exhibition took place in a warehouse full of white walls, cheap wine, and ambitious people pretending not to sweat. I wore a navy dress and my wedding ring. For an hour, everything went well. I gave my short speech. A graduate student asked a brilliant question about repair ethics. A curator offered me a project in Osaka. Then I turned toward the terrace and saw Akari watching me with a glass of wine in her hand. May stood beside her, eyes lowered. "Mina," Akari said, as if we were old friends meeting at a market. "You look well." "That seems to disappoint you." Her smile held. "Still sharp. Still tired of you." May flinched. Akari glanced at my ring. "Does she let you speak to people without permission?" "You're speaking, aren't you?" That wasn't an answer. It was exactly as much answer as you deserved. I tried to step past her, but she moved into my path. Not enough to be obvious. Enough to remind me she knew how to corner without touching. "I heard your marriage has become convincing." My throat tightened. "Move." "Does she know you used to cry when I forgot to come home?" Akari. May's voice was soft, warning. Akari ignored her. Does she know how easily you confuse attention with love? It hurt because truth, twisted, still has edges. I said move. She leaned closer. Does she kiss you like she owns you? My anger cleared the fear. No, that was your specialty. Her face changed, ugly for one unguarded second. Then she smiled with sudden brightness. There she is. Before I understood what she intended, she caught my chin and kissed me. It was not desire. It was a theft performed with lips. A deliberate photograph for anyone watching from inside. I shoved her back hard enough that wine splashed over her wrist. Don't touch me. The terrace had gone silent. People stared through the glass doors. Akari's eyes glittered. You didn't always mind. I felt sick. Then the air behind me shifted. Not loud, not rushed. But everyone on that terrace looked over my shoulder at once. Reina had arrived. She wore a black suit, no coat despite the evening chill, hair slightly wind-touched, expression so still it seemed carved. Two of her men remained near the doorway, but she walked alone. Her eyes moved from my face to Akari's mouth, to the handprint of wine on Akari's sleeve, to May's pale silence. I had never felt anger enter a space so quietly. Mina, she said, not wife, not possession, my name. Did you invite that? The question was for me, and the whole terrace heard it. My voice shook. No. Reina looked at Akari. That was all. Just looked. Akari's confidence faltered because Reina did not give her outrage to play against. She's dramatic, Akari said too fast. It was just a kiss. Reina stepped closer. You think the word just makes theft smaller? Akari lifted her chin. You can't threaten me in public. I can, Reina said. But I gave my wife my word, and I keep my word even when people like you test its inconvenience. My heart slammed painfully. No violence, no threats. Months ago, in a hotel room after a snowstorm, I had made her promise. Now rage stood in her body like a blade, and she held it because I had asked. Then what are you going to do? Akari demanded. Reina looked toward the gallery owner near the doors. This exhibition received funding from the Kazama Arts Renewal Fund. The man bowed so fast his glasses slipped. Yes, Kazama-san. Ms. Sato will leave. Of course, Akari laughed, brittle. You think you can buy every room? Reina's gaze returned to her. No, only this one. May whispered Akari's name, but Akari's eyes were on me now, furious and desperate. Mina, say something. Tell your wife to stop acting like you're made of glass. I stepped forward before Reina could answer. My mouth still felt contaminated, but my voice, when it came, was steady enough. I am not made of glass. That is why I can tell you to leave without shattering. Akari stared at me. You used to love me. Yes, I said. That is the worst thing I can say about my taste. Someone behind us made a strangled sound. May covered her mouth. Reina's eyes flickered, and if we had not been in public, I think she might have smiled. Akari left with security on either side of her, not touching, simply making the path impossible to resist. May lingered. I'm sorry, she said, for all of it. The apology arrived too late to change the past and too early to be useful, but I felt its weight anyway. Then stop following her into rooms where she hurts people. May nodded, tears in her eyes, and walked out alone. The moment they were gone, my strength vanished. Reina saw it before I swayed. She did not grab me. She held out her hand, palm up. Come with me? I put my hand in hers. She led me through the service corridor to a quiet storage room smelling of paint, cardboard, and dust. The door closed behind us. For 3 seconds, Reina stood with her back to it, eyes shut, breathing like a woman preventing an earthquake. Reina, I said. Her eyes opened. The control in them was frightening because it was cracking. I wanted to break every finger she put on you. My pulse stumbled. But you didn't. No, because of the promise. Because of you. She crossed the room in 2 steps, then stopped just short of touching me. May I hold you? The question broke through the nausea, the humiliation, the old freeze in my body. I nodded. Reina's arms came around me, firm and trembling. She buried her face briefly against my hair, and I felt the rage in her not as danger to me, but as a storm she had locked outside the house with herself still in it. I'm sorry, she said. You didn't do anything. I was not there. I stood alone because I chose to. Her arms tightened once, then loosened immediately as if she feared holding too hard. I know. I leaned back enough to see her face. You came. Of course I came. You were in a negotiation. A man can be offended later. My wife was in a room with ghosts. My eyes burned. Reina, do not defend her to me tonight. I wasn't going to. Good. The word was low, rough, nothing like her public voice. The air between us changed. Anger, relief, desire, fear. All of it folded together until I could not separate one heat from another. Reina's gaze dropped to my mouth, then darkened with pain. I do not want to kiss you where she forced herself. I touched her cheek. Then kissed somewhere else. Her breath caught. For a moment, the cold Kazama heiress looked utterly lost. Then she lifted my hand and pressed her mouth to my palm. Once, twice, slow enough to make my knees weak. Here? She asked. I nodded. She kissed my wrist, the inside of my elbow, the bare skin just below my sleeve, each touch asking, each answer pulling me back into myself. When her mouth reached my shoulder, I shivered. She stopped immediately. Cold? No. Her eyes met mine, searching. Tell me. I want you. The sentence landed between us with a force that made the storage room feel too small. Mina, not because of her, not because I need proving, because I want my wife to touch me like I chose her. Reina's face changed. Hunger, reverence, fear, restraint. Then choose again. I kissed her. This time there was no phone, no thunder, no interruption except the harsh, uneven sound of our breathing. Her hands held my waist as if the shape of me deserved study. Mine found the back of her neck, the smooth line of her undercut, the tremor she could hide from a room but not from me. The kiss turned deeper, warmer, edged with the danger of months denied. When I pressed closer, she made a sound against my mouth that I felt everywhere. Then she pulled back just enough to rest her forehead against mine. Not in a storage room after she hurt you, she said, voice almost breaking. I laughed breathlessly, half frustrated, half in love. You are impossibly noble at the worst times. No, she said. I am trying to be worthy of being wanted by you. That was when I knew I loved her in a way revenge could never explain. We went home separately from the crowd, together in the car, silent, until the penthouse doors closed behind us. Mrs. Watanabe took one look at our faces and wordlessly disappeared into the kitchen to make tea with the aggressive dignity of a woman who suspected emotional disaster but respected privacy. Reina stood in the entry, removing her cufflinks with hands that were almost steady. I took off my shoes. The city glowed below us. Between us, the distance we had maintained for 6 months suddenly looked artificial and exhausted. I need to shower, I said. Reina's eyes softened with immediate understanding. Of course. Will you stay? The question came out small. Outside the door. In my room, not in the bathroom. Just near. Yes. She followed me to my bedroom and sat in the armchair near the window while I showered. I scrubbed my mouth twice, then stopped because I heard Reina's voice in my head. Theft does not make you unclean. When I came out in a robe, hair damp, she was still there, looking out over the river. She turned and then looked away with such control that desire became almost funny. You can look at me, I said. Can I? Yes. Her gaze returned slowly. Not greedy, not pretending not to want. Honest. It warmed me more than the robe. I walked to her. "I love you," I said before fear could edit me. Raina went completely still. For once, she had no ready answer. "You don't have to say it back," I added quickly, because panic loves to ruin good moments. "I just needed it said in a room where nobody is using it as a weapon." Raina stood. "Mina." Her voice was low, unsteady. "I have loved you since the night you stood in my office, wrapped in a blanket, and demanded exit terms before accepting protection." A laugh broke through my tears. "That is a very specific love story. I am a specific woman. Yes." She came closer, stopping close enough that the warmth of her body touched the air between us. "I love your stubbornness, your inconvenient mercy, the way you repair torn paper as if wounds deserve patience, the way you look at my family history and see weight before danger. I love that you made me promise not to become what people fear, then trusted me enough to be angry when keeping the promise hurt." Her hand lifted, stopped. "I love you. Not as strategy, not as revenge, not as my wife because the law says so. As Mina." I reached for her. She met me halfway. What happened after that belonged to us, not to Akari, not to the contract, not to any room that had ever watched me be humiliated. Raina kissed me slowly at first, then with a devotion so fierce it made the city lights blur. Every touch asked, every answer changed the room. When the robe slipped from one shoulder, she paused until I nodded. When her mouth moved to my skin, she whispered my name like an oath. We did not hurry. There was nothing to prove. Desire, I learned that night, did not have to take. It could wait at each door until invited in. Later, wrapped in sheets I had once considered too expensive to trust, I lay with my head on Raina's shoulder and traced the crane tattoo on her arm. "You snapped tonight," I murmured. "Did I?" Politely. Embarrassing, terrifying. Her fingers moved through my damp hair. "I frightened you?" I lifted my head. "No. You frightened everyone else by not frightening me." She considered that, then kissed my forehead. "Acceptable." I smiled against her skin. "Very romantic." I am learning. The scandal after Akari's kiss should have been ugly, and it was. Photographs circulated within hours. Akari leaning in, me frozen, Raina arriving like judgment in a black suit. The captions wrote themselves badly. "Rivalry reignites." Kazama wife caught in intimate moment with ex. Gallery heiress escorted out after confrontation. For 24 hours, my name belonged to strangers again. This time, I did not collapse. I sat at Raina's dining table with T, my lawyer, her lawyer, and a public relations consultant who looked like she had been carved from expensive caffeine. "We recommend silence," the consultant said. Raina looked at me. "Mina decides." 4 words. The table shifted around them. I looked at the printed photographs, at the worst second of my body freezing, captured and spread. "No," I said. "Not silence." The consultant straightened. "What do you prefer?" "A statement about consent. Brief, no details, no apology." Raina's eyes warmed. Together we drafted it. At the Kisaragi Young Artists reception, Ms. Akari Sato kissed me without my consent. My wife intervened after asking whether the contact was invited. "I will not discuss private pain for public entertainment. I ask that the same respect for consent be extended to every person whose body is treated as a stage for someone else's story." It was the hardest paragraph I had ever written. It was also the cleanest cut. The response was not universal support. Nothing ever is. Some people called me dramatic. Some called Raina controlling. Some dug through my past and found photographs of Akari and me smiling, as if having loved someone once proved they could touch me forever. But others wrote quietly. Women I barely knew, a curator, a bartender. A college student who said she had never seen someone powerful ask first in public, and that it made her cry. The world did not heal, but a small corner of it rearranged. Akari disappeared from public events for a while. May sent a letter, handwritten this time, saying she had left Akari and entered therapy. I read it once and placed it in a drawer. Forgiveness would come later or not. I was done rushing my own heart to make other people comfortable. Reina's father summoned us 2 weeks later. Kazama Hiroto lived in a traditional house on a hill above the city, surrounded by pines and men who looked like they had never been surprised in their lives. I had met him only once before the wedding, when he examined me across a table and said, "You have frightened eyes but a stubborn mouth." I had replied, "You have a frightening mouth but tired eyes," because apparently self-preservation had left the building. Reina had laughed then, one short sound that made every man in the room look as if a shrine bell had cracked. Now we knelt across from him in a tatami room smelling of incense and rain-damp wood. He was older than rumor, smaller than fear, but his presence filled the room like smoke. "You made a spectacle," he said to Reina. She bowed her head slightly. "No, Akari Sato made a spectacle. I ended it." "You let your wife issue a statement." "I did not let her. Mina chose." His gaze moved to me. "And did she write that word, consent, to embarrass our house?" My pulse jumped. Reina's hand rested near mine on the tatami, close but not touching. Choice, even here. "I wrote it because it was true," I said. Hiroto studied me. "Truth is not always useful. Neither is silence." One of the men behind him inhaled sharply. Hiroto's mouth twitched. "Your wife has made you bold." "No," Reina said before I could answer. "She was bold when I found her. She was only cold." The room stilled. Hiroto looked at his daughter for a long time. Something old and complicated passed between them. "You love her." Reina did not hesitate. "Yes." My heart struck once against my ribs. Hiroto leaned back. "That makes you vulnerable." "Everything worth protecting does." Spoken like a woman who thinks protection is clean. Reina's eyes darkened. "No, spoken like a woman trying to make it cleaner than what she inherited." The silence that followed felt like a blade balanced on a fingertip. Then Hiroto laughed, low and rough. "Your mother would have enjoyed this." Reina went still. I had never heard her mother mentioned. Hiroto's gaze softened by a fraction. "Keep your wife then, and keep your promises. If you fail, she seems capable of punishing you herself." "Thank you," I said before I could stop myself. "For the compliment or the permission?" he asked. I wasn't asking permission. Reina's hand covered her mouth. It was the closest I had ever seen her come to breaking in front of her father. Hiroto stared at me, then laughed again. "Good," he said. "The Kazama house has enough obedient ghosts." Marriage after love became stranger and simpler at once. The contract remained in a drawer because Reina insisted legal exits should not vanish just because feelings entered. "Romance is not a substitute for safety," she said when I protested. "You are deeply unmarketable as a fantasy husband." "Wife." Fantasy wife. Better. We argued about normal things. Whether she worked too late, whether I accepted too many restoration commissions, whether Mrs. Watanabe was allowed to smuggle vegetables into everything, whether Koi could be emotionally manipulative. We also argued about harder things, the men still loyal to her father's old ways, the cost of legitimacy, the danger attached to her name, my fear of becoming dependent, her fear of becoming controlling. Sometimes she retreated into silence, and I had to remind her that withholding pain did not protect me from it. Sometimes I spiraled after seeing Akari's name online, and Reina had to remind me that healing did not require indifference by a deadline. We learned each other honestly. When we failed, we apologized without turning apology into theater. When we touched, we asked, not because desire was fragile, but because it deserved devotion. At the end of the year, the same gallery that had watched my humiliation invited me to curate a restoration exhibition. Not as an assistant, as the lead consultant. The old director was gone, replaced after financial issues Raina claimed not to have caused, and I chose not to investigate too aggressively. The exhibition centered on repaired works, torn prints, burned letters, cracked screens, objects damaged by time and made stronger by careful hands. I almost refused. Then Raina found me staring at the invitation in my workroom and said, "Do you want the room back?" I looked at the embossed gallery seal, at the name that had once made my stomach twist. "Yes." "Then take it. Will you come? As your wife or your security risk?" "Both can be true." Her smile was small and devastating. "Then yes." Opening night arrived with rain instead of snow. I wore a deep red dress and my grandmother's earrings. Raina wore black silk and the wedding ring she had begun wearing openly after I teased her that the city feared her too much to flirt anyway. The gallery looked different when I entered beside her. Or perhaps I did. People turned. They whispered. They smiled more carefully than before. I walked to the central display, where the poet's repaired letter lay beneath glass, and began my speech. I spoke about damage not as failure, but as record. About repair not as erasure, but as relationship with the wound. About the ethics of touching what had been broken. Halfway through, I looked at Raina. She stood near the back, hands folded, face unreadable to everyone but me. Pride softened the edges of her eyes. I did not need the room to choose me anymore. That was why I could stand in it. Akari attended near the end. I had known she might. She looked thinner, quieter, her beauty no longer arranged as a weapon, but still sharp enough to hurt if mishandled. May was not with her. Raina saw her before I did and came to my side, not in front. "Do you want to leave?" she asked. "No." "Do you want me to make her leave?" I looked across the gallery. Akari stood before a repaired screen, arms wrapped around herself. "No." Raina nodded. "I will be near." Akari approached when the crowd thinned. For the first time since I had known her, she seemed unsure how to begin without performing. "Mina," she said. "Akari." Her eyes flicked to Raina, then back to me. "I came to apologize. Not to ask for anything." Raina's presence remained steady beside me. I said nothing. Akari swallowed. I was cruel. With May. With the announcement. At the terrace. I told myself I was being honest because I didn't want to admit I was being selfish. And when you became happy, or looked happy, I wanted to prove I still had some claim. I didn't. The apology did not fix the past. It did not make me want her back, or want friendship, or want anything except the strange peace of realizing her power over me had become memory rather than weather. "No," I said. "You didn't." Tears gathered in her eyes. "I'm sorry." "I believe you." She looked stunned, almost hopeful. I held up one hand gently. "That is not the same as access." Her face crumpled, but she nodded. "I know." Raina's hand brushed mine, a silent anchor. Akari looked at her. "You really love her?" Raina's voice was calm. "Yes." Akari gave a small, sad laugh. "Then don't make my mistakes." Raina's eyes turned colder. "I make my own." I elbowed her lightly, and Akari actually smiled through tears. Then she left. No escort, no spectacle. Just a woman walking out of a room she no longer controlled. Later, after the last guest departed and the gallery staff began lowering lights, I stood again beneath the staircase where Akari had once announced my replacement. Rain tapped softly against the high windows. Raina came up behind me, stopping a respectful distance away. "Are you saying goodbye?" she asked. "Maybe." To her? To the version of me that thought being chosen publicly meant being loved privately. Raina was quiet. Then she said, "Do you regret marrying me?" I turned. The question was too calm, which meant it had lived in her for a while. Sometimes I regret why I married you." Her face accepted the pain without flinching. "Yes." I crossed the space between us. "Never that I did." Her breath changed. I took her hand and lifted it, looking at the ring on her finger, then mine. "I thought this was a shield." It was. Then a weapon. Sometimes. Then a contract. Still, technically. I smiled. Now it feels like a door. Reina looked down at me. The cold Yakuza wife the city feared. The woman who had once stood across from me in a snowstorm and offered warmth with exit terms. "Open?" she asked. "Open." She kissed me beneath the staircase. Not for cameras, not to prove anything to anyone. Not because another woman had kissed me first. But because the room was ours now, and so was the choice. Her mouth was warm, careful, familiar. Her hand settled at my waist after I leaned in. Outside, rain silvered the windows. Inside, repaired paper rested beneath glass. Every seam visible if you knew where to look. Every wound held together by patience and skill. I used to think love was the person who announced you proudly to a room. Then I thought love was the person who defended you when the room turned cruel. Reina taught me it was neither performance nor rescue, though it could contain both. Love was the woman who asked before touching what others had stolen. The woman who kept a promise even when rage begged her to break it. The woman who stood beside you instead of in front of you, because she knew your strength was not a threat to her protection. My wife had snapped the night she saw another woman kiss me, yes. But not because I belonged to her, because by then she understood exactly how hard I had fought to belong to myself. And when we walked out of the gallery together, past the staircase, past the donors, past the old story that no longer had teeth, Reina opened her black umbrella over both of us. "Home?" she asked. I slid my hand into hers beneath the rain. "Home." This time, no one left me in the snow. This time, no one wrote the ending for me. This time, I walked beside the woman I had chosen, and the city, dangerous and glittering and full of ghosts, opened around us like a door I was no longer afraid to enter.